start, because I don't think we've been on a call together yet, just by sort of introducing myself. I'm Sarah, and I support one of the classes in continuing professional studies, which is a high school equivalency class. So the students that I work with are preparing to take the task test. And then I thought I'd just ask you what kind of students you're supporting, and what class.
Freshman sociology class. Yeah.
Okay. And so you're a writing tutor for them?
Yeah, basically I just help edit their papers, see if it's in like a cohesive format, in order, see if it's like, if it makes grammatical sense. Like, I don't really deal with like minute grammatical errors, like, spelling and punctuation, that only if it interferes with the overall work, like if it's not
if it's not making sense, the grammar is being able to
if it's not comprehensible, then yeah.
So you're kind of helping them more with the development of their essays and arguments.
If they're answering the question that the professor asked, if they don't understand the question, then we try to like break it down. If I don't understand it, then I email her and I say, "What do you mean?" Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And how do you support the class? Do you work like one-on-one with the students or in groups?
It's embedded tutoring, so I'm like, I have to go like into the classroom, and I have helped a couple of students one-on-one, like right after class. Usually it's supposed to be like this, web-based, and then but I haven't really done one. I supposed to have done at least one, but then no one signed up or no one was on the call. I had like third, and like no one was there, so I ended up doing videos like on my own, and then would copy and paste, give it to the professor so she can copy and paste it on Blackboard. So I haven't really actually done any tutoring like with a group of students online or in person, just one-on-one a bit after class.
So it's mostly you're making the videos and then occasionally meeting with the students one-on-one. So you're kind of in your videos, they're if I understand you correctly, they're interactive, but are you doing like a little lesson and then going over the things they're having trouble with?
Like I said, it's not interactive because no one's on the video, so
no one's been on the video. So
I do it. It's like more of proactive, so it's just me telling them, okay, these are like some good study habits, or this is how to take notes, this, that, and the third, or this is how to sign up for tutoring if you're having trouble, finding the link, this, that, and the third. So just simple lessons, and then just
best practices for them. That's really cool. Okay, so that's helpful to know. And I just wanted to make sure that we connected to the last call. Did you get a chance to watch the first cohort meeting on commenting on students' work? And if you did you have any questions or anything before we move on to today's?
No, I didn't see, because I don't know where it's posted to.
Oh, well, I can share it with you guys. I shared it with you guys via email, but I will, if you are interested after the call, I'll reshare it with you. Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's see, we went over how your tutoring experience has been so far. And you're working with traditional students, with like college age freshmen. Yeah. So I guess I didn't explain the sort of students I work with, but they're adult learners. So they're people who've, for whatever reason, had to leave school, and now they're wanting to go on and get their high school equivalency. So they range in age quite a bit. It could be some of the students are just, still high school aged, maybe 18,
Yeah.
So kind of on that cusp between high school age and college age. And then we have
Yeah.
people there, you know.
Yeah, I was a TA for ESL students like years ago for continuing ed, but they're mostly like ESL, so they were like 18 to like 64.
You get a really interesting range, I think, and it's really, you know, you'll have people who just kind of, I think, breeze through it a little faster just because they're still in the practice of school, you know, and then you have the people who have been out for a long time, raised families, and now they're coming back. So you probably had a very similar experience. That's very cool. So I was going to ask you, okay, so we're going to talk about persuasive and expository writing. So when you think of expository writing, do you have any sort of, well, I guess the first question I have is, in the course that you're supporting, in the sociology course, do you feel like the students are doing one over the other?
Yeah, I would say it's more persuasive writing because you have to kind of, it's based on fact. So you have to kind of answer the professor's question and try to convince them that this is.
So
Yeah.
they're taking a stance on, you know, whatever the question is. They're kind of taking a side and defending that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess we'll start. I just thought that would be interesting for us to kind of talk about what kind of writing we're seeing more in the courses we're supporting. For me, I see more also mostly persuasive writing, because that's what the task, the writing portion that they have to kind of read a few passages of material, and then they're asked a question and they have to answer it, but it requires that they take a stance and make an argument. Mm-hmm. But I guess we could start out by talking about expository writing. And do you have any, like, when you think of expository writing, do you think of, like, what do you think the purpose of expository writing is?
Expository meaning like exposition. So
yeah.
Yeah, so that's pretty much like what I do in my English courses. Yeah, so, you know, writing whatever, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, whatever it is, having some backstory to what you're writing so that it leads to, cohesively leads to like the conclusion so that it, you know, matches up.
Yeah, so it's more of like I think the purpose of expository writing is more to inform, versus to kind of argument. So often I think you see expository writing in kind of early, you know, entry level classes when the professors are really looking for the students to develop an understanding of the subject matter. You know, I guess the example that I, you know, so I thought about it. I tried to come up with a topic, and then think about how you would approach it. You know, essay versus an argument essay.
Yeah, that sounds like psychology because like it's kind of a mix with psychology. It's like the sociology courses where it's a, you know, it has some persuasive. You have to, you know, prove whatever, but it's, you don't really pick a side really with psychology like you do with sociology. It's more, you know, a lot of expository. Like,
yeah, it's like you, so what I was thinking about was, you know, so the writer is really, the goal of the essay is to, with a more kind of nuanced and richer understanding of the material. So instead of maybe, well, the example that I thought of when I was thinking about this, and I have some materials to share with you, which I should have done right before this call, but I wasn't sure, I was too busy seeing if we were gonna connect. But the thing I was thinking about is like, if you were, say, asked to write an expository essay about aggressive type dogs like pit bull dogs and breed specific legislation. Most likely, there are different ways you could do it, but the essay would really focus on,
well, I would say focus on like behaviors of that specific of those breeds, and showing like what the history is for their behaviors. It's actually a great topic that you picked because I'm in the animal business. So
I'm really interested in, I put together some materials that I'm going to share with you guys to go with this call, but one of them was this, essay that I really loved that appeared in Esquire in 2014, and it was on pit bull type dogs. And then, I kind of found two examples. One that's very, the essay from Esquire was definitely a persuasive essay, or that's how I read it anyways. And then I found, a persuasive essay and an expository essay on the topic. And so I think the big difference is that in the expository essay, it's really the writer is looking at, the history of these kinds of dogs. Like, what does this side say? What are the, maybe you're exploring bite statistics, you're exploring attacks, but you're looking at it from both angles, from the people who say, so you're going to give examples of why this side says pit bulls are dangerous, and then the other side, which is, here are the reasons why maybe the counterclaim, and so you're not choosing a side, you're just trying to really explore the material. And then look at, like, what have people done? They've done breed-specific legislation. What is it? And then, how did it work? So you're still drawing from the same kind of, you're using and evidence to support the exploration topic, but you're not saying pit bulls should be banned or shouldn't be banned. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
But what do you do in the animal business?
I'm mostly a veterinary assistant. I worked for a year at ACC as Animal Care Centers of New York as a New Hope liaison. So there I would, it was talking to rescue groups, trying to save the cats and dogs from the quote unquote kill list, because they would have, less of animals each day to be put down. So our job, the night before the day, or during that week before we know that they're going up, is to try to find groups to save this animal if they have the medical means to do so or not. Do emergency animals that come in and are like, almost on their deathbed. So we have to try to find those specific groups who we know can financially support them, or else they'll go on the list. Things like that. Yeah.
Very cool. So what was I gonna say? So I guess, when you think about an expository essay, like, how do you think that it develops? Like, okay, so let me back up. So, you have your thesis. So how would the thesis be different in an expository essay versus an argumentative essay? So maybe we should pause and talk for a second about, like, I keep using the word argumentative, and I should be saying persuasive, but I guess they're the same in the end. So the purpose, what would you say the purpose of a, like, persuasive piece of writing is?
Using the article that you chose, it's more of like, they try to convince you of like one side or the other kind of thing.
Exactly.
Like, this is what I want you to believe. They try to even maybe pull it off as, expository, like, yeah, these are the facts, but it's facts that they want you to, they want you to know, not all the facts, Yeah,
so. You're selecting. So that, I think that is a big difference, is in, how the essay is developed. You're going to have two very different theses. Like, the thesis of a expository essay is going to be more open. It's going to be more of a broad kind of, I'm going to explore this topic kind of an essay. And so then as the paragraphs that come after, as they develop, they're, using facts and evidence to just really dig deep into the topic. And the conclusion that, when you reach the conclusion, the goal is like to have a better understanding of the material. Whereas with an argumentative essay, you're going, so in that way, I think expository writing is premise-based. Like that's what's driving your exploration is, I'm really interested in the topic and the topic is driving. Versus in an argumentative essay where your thesis is gonna have an analytical edge. You're gonna say, let's go back to the pitbull type dog example. Pitbulls should be banned because they're dangerous. I don't believe I have a pitbull sleeping on the couch behind me. But if, but let's say that's the claim that you're making, then yes, like exactly what you're saying before, you're gonna in your expository essay, you're gonna introduce lots of different facts and evidence from both sides of the fence. But in your argumentative essay, how do you choose, how would you choose your facts differently or your evidence differently? You might,
whatever, I guess it'd be based on your like beliefs, I would assume.
Yeah, whatever. You probably should address the other side briefly, but only to say I'm better, like my side's better than that side. And then all the evidence you're going to use in your supporting paragraphs is going to be stuff that supports your argument.
Like I've seen the students, like the couple of students that I worked with when I was trying to help them with their paper, he was definitely for like one side. And I guess after, because I think sometimes students will do like, especially like freshmen, they'll try to probably go with the side that they have to do the least work with or that they feel has the strongest evidence, whether they believe it or not, so that way they have something to put on their, fill their paper with. And I think what happens is once they actually end up going through the facts after doing the paper and trying to edit it, they're like, oh, I actually believe this site actually after this, that, and a third. I'm like, So, yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that's really interesting because I do think that there's, it's like, there's a way in which, and I think it's an interesting exercise to argue something that you don't necessarily believe in. Like, I'm sure I could write a very convincing essay that, there should be laws in place around, aggressive type dogs. And I would do that just by only looking at, bite statistics, at, the things that are reported in the news, but I wouldn't choose to address, how, the difference in population, say, between these kind of dogs and other dogs. So I think that's really interesting point you made. So I guess in that way, persuasive writing, like how does persuasive writing develop differently? Like how, we talked about how the essay, an expository essay develops by, exploring the material and really digging through it with the goal of being interested in the topic and the premise and reaching a place where there's a deeper understanding. So if that's the case there, then how do you think a persuasive essay develops? Like what's the difference in the drive? It's okay.
I think of, like your last statement about, how the other side should be in there kind of, or, writing on a topic that you don't necessarily agree on. I feel like that's why it's great to have like debate teams, because they'll always tell you, okay, you're going to write about this and whether you believe it or not. So it's like a great tool to for persuasive writing and future lawyers for so they can like write on those different topics. So I would guess it kind of it would start off with um, the side that they believe. So, you know, a little bit of history on that and um, why they believe, you know, this to be. And then the next paragraph or so, okay, this is the argument for the other side. And so now this is why my point or my belief is stronger than this other point, you know.
Yeah, so it has this, when you start, you know, I think if you think about the essays as a journey, you know, if you're on this expository essay journey, you're kind of more interested in the journey, right? Like, you don't have a necessary destination in mind other than you're gonna, in a clear, concise, and organized way, explore the issue. Whereas if you're on a, you know, if you're on, you know where you're going in an argumentative, in a persuasive essay. And so from the very start, you have a conclusion in mind, like you've made a conclusion about the material, and everything you do in your writing is in support of that conclusion.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's really driven, one's driven really more by the topic and an exploration of the topic. The other is driven by a conclusion and making sure that you're supporting that argument that you've come to. So let me just review. Okay, so I guess also we could talk really briefly about the different kinds of arguments that people make, like what they may be based in. Like what do you see a lot of the arguments in the class you're supporting? Like the students are making arguments that are based on maybe logic, maybe they're based more on like emotion, an emotional argument, or an ethical argument, you know?
Yeah. Well, with sociology, it's kind of almost all of that combined. Yeah.
Well, I think almost any essay is going to kind of have a little bit of all of that, but
it's like the different topics that are involved, whether, you know, because the topics vary from like gender roles in society or what was the other one? Abortion rights, you know, pro-life, things like that. So, you know, it's what, like, obviously, like, abortion rights is hugely based on belief, you know. There's, and they try to back it up with science, saying, oh, this is where life begins, this, that, and the third. And there's different beliefs even for that, you know. Whether or not, like, it doesn't matter what the science says, oh, this is when they have a heart and a brain, so that's when they come, you know, as a person. But then there's the belief, like, well, no, it doesn't matter, as soon as the embryo, it's like, you know, so that's largely based on belief. Whereas something like, well, even gender roles now, especially with you know, transgender, you know, plight coming out more, it's a lot more based on belief as well. And what I mean by that is, as far as people and their opinions on said, you know, said group, like, oh, whether they believe or not that they choose this way, or, you know, they're born this way, you know, things like that. So that's opinion based as well. But there are topics that are more logic based when they start getting into like Durkheim and you know, the sociologist point of view. That would be more logic based when they have like a specific, you know, topic based on the the readings of those specific sociologists, then it really gets more logic based.
Yeah, one, I think even in what you were saying about, say, the abortion topic, you know, there you kind of pinpointed, I think almost one of, you know, so like maybe looking at the science and saying, you know, here's where, you know, here's where the brain's fully developed, here's where the heart, you know, is the organs are, you know, these different milestones of development, and what that means in terms of what a fetus can or can't feel. I feel like that is an example of a kind of a logical claim, right? You're going to point to the science and say, let's base, you know, our study of this in what science tells us. But then some people are going to take a different approach and say, look at it more ethically, like right, wrong, you know, and that's going to be the basis of their claim is which side of the debate is right or wrong, and why, you know, where are they finding the and then obviously there's a lot of emotion that feeds into to that topic, and you can, there, you know, a writer might make an emotional appeal, you know, for this reason, and this reason, but you might also see a combination of all of those, you know, arguments. There might be a place where the writer's taking a more emotional stance, and there might be another one, you know, another paragraph where they're really making a very logical claim.
And it's usually like, as far as those arguments in going in the public, there's usually no middle ground. Like it's all or nothing, or this or that. But I think individually, you know, as far as a person's belief, there is sometimes a middle ground. Like I actually had a solicitation call the other day coming, oh, are you pro-life? Or I'm like, what? I'm like, click, okay. You know, because there are people who believe like, no, you shouldn't, you know, get abortion, you know, but then there are cases of like rape, this, that, and the third, where maybe you should because you don't know what that person has, you know. And if you're not ready to have a child, then you shouldn't have opened your legs, and no, don't get abortion, you know, things like that. So it's, you know, sometimes people do, like individually, there's like, you know, some kind of middle ground, but like in a broad spectrum of like, as far as the public is concerned, it's like, no, you have to be pro-life or, you know, this or that. So.
Yeah, I think, whoops, I was trying to pull up a document to share, but my computer's so old and very sad. So I think, yeah, I think that there's just, it's interesting to think about, you know, when you're supporting students and even in your own, you know, writing, the different kinds of ways we use to persuade, you know, and to defend our argument. So then I guess really quickly we can kind of go through, just if you had to sum up the major differences between persuasive versus expository writing, what would you say the biggest difference is? Just so we kind of make sure we...
Okay, so again, with persuasive, it's trying to make a point and trying to make a point and like trying to convince the, you know, the public or the reader of that point, of that specific point. Whereas expository is, I wouldn't say persuasive is not based on fact, but it's based on, again, very subjective facts.
Where you're in control of which facts you're choosing to share.
Exactly, like you're controlling the conversation. Exactly, yeah. And expository is more broad-based facts, trying to, you know, collect and distribute all the facts for the reader so that they can think on their own, you know, oh, okay, I see the points for both sides, and it you know, you give the reader the choice to make their own decision.
Yeah, and it may be that, you know, the writer will come to some kind of conclusion at the end, but the essay is very, you know, is really an exploration of, let me get a deeper understanding of and inform my reader of this topic. And the other thing that I think is interesting that I was thinking about during this is, what is the difference in how a writer imagines the audience? I guess what I mean by that is, so I think in an argument, when they're defending their argument in a persuasive essay, there's an assumption that the readership, that their audience has some kind of general, like a pretty good foundation of the topic. Like some, they have, that there's some knowledge of the topic already there. Whereas I feel like if you think about, I don't know, I guess I'm interested in what your opinion on, what the assumption is about the audience for expository writing.
I get what you mean. Yeah, I guess for those readers would be like some people who don't necessarily have one way, they don't think one way or the other. They're brand new to the subject, but it's piqued their interests as of late. So they just want some basic information about this so they can make an informed decision. Maybe it's sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I didn't mean to interrupt. You go ahead. Sorry.
So it's like, say, let's say you have jury duty, and it's on, the case is about a topic that you know nothing about. So decision whether, to try to not be too subjective when you're in the jury box, you just want to get something that's, that has all the sides so you can make your own informed decision.
Yeah, so it sort of in the same way as like jurors, come in. When you're the author of an expository essay, kind of assumes like, okay, well, the people who I'm writing to are not, they don't have a lot of knowledge about this topic. So I'm going to inform them, in the way that, a jury would be informed of everything that's happened. And so it sort of assumes that there's less knowledge, that this is kind of a way of introducing the topic. And I think that's interesting because if you think about the times when it's like, when you often are asked to write expository essays, it's, when you're first getting started in a new area of study. And so it's a way that the professor or an instructor is kind of helping students to increase their knowledge about, to get that, to build a foundation, so that then as they move up into more, to higher level courses, they're going to be asked to draw more conclusions of their own and to kind of draw on that knowledge they've built from this other, writing practice.
Other classes, yeah.
Awesome. Anything else? Well, I guess just, do you have any questions, or do you feel like there's things you're struggling with around this to help support students in the class that you're?
As far as the writing, no. I mean, especially because no one has really come to me all semester. So,
so you are,
sorry?
Yeah. No, that's so yeah. So you're really you're sort of more, yeah, because you mentioned that you're really in a more of a place where you're sharing kind of basic best practices, but you're not having an opportunity as of yet to kind of sit down and look at students' work one-on-one with them.
Only a couple of times, yeah. They're not, because they're freshmen, so they're not, they don't I guess they just don't, either they forget or they don't want to ask for help for whatever reason. I've been there, done that. But it ends up biting them, in the end. But yeah, I feel like I have more success if it was like a sophomore or junior class, or at least sophomore, because they'll probably ask for help. Because I feel like maybe junior, because they're almost done, they also might not ask for help because they figure they have it down at this point. you know, you would think freshmen would ask more because they're brand new to it, and you know, but I feel like maybe somewhere in the middle is where
Well,
they would be like,
yeah, I think there's sometimes in the beginning it's like they don't know what, but that's why it's great that you're there, is that you're helping them understand what resources are available to them and reminding them that they have these places they can go for help.
mm-hmm.
But I think sometimes, like, you know, students are overwhelmed in the beginning and they don't really know all these, that they have all these options, nervous to ask for help. So it takes them a while to get to the point where they're like, oh, you know, I can reach out.
Yeah, so that's why we started, because that's why when we have a sign up sheet that they go on to, so they don't have to, you know, directly, you know, go to me after class and be like, hey, I need your help. They can just, you know, discreetly sign, well, not necessarily discreetly, because everyone has access to that Google the Excel sheet. But I guess, I don't know, I think maybe their issue is that it gets distributed because it gets posted, so they feel like they want a one-on-one. They don't want it, yeah, they don't want it broadcast, you know, even though they don't have to be on video, they can do like what I'm doing and just do, you know, the phone. uh, you know, if they don't, you know, they think they're not camera ready or, you know, photogenic. But
I understand that feeling. um, and maybe it's they, yeah, I mean, so there's, I think as you, so it's cool that you're kind of learning these things that you can carry in, or if you're coming back to tutor next semester, you can kind of foresee these things happening and make students, you know, aware that, you know, they have these other options. And also, maybe with the Google Sheet, do you feel like, I wasn't sure if I heard you correctly, but do you feel like they're also nervous because the Google Sheet's shared with everyone?
Sorry, you broke up. You said, am I right that the Google Sheets was what?
Oh, it is available for everyone to see?
Yeah, so they can see like who's signing up, is that in the third? But I think it's,
Maybe there needs to be like an email.
they
I mean,
can also
then someone
they have those options. They can email us as well. Like,
not.
yeah, because it's on, put it on Blackboard and say, here's our email address. So you can email us if you want any issue. I think where the issue lies, it's more of they don't want the lesson broadcast. They just want a one-on-one. And we try to, you know, let them know, and try to uh, we try to really focus on the fact that it's, if broadcasting it is beneficial for everyone, because your problem is not specific and unique to you. Other students may be having this issue, but they either, you know, may not have be available at that specific time, or they have more trouble asking for help than you do.
Or
So
they're not as aware that that's an issue they're struggling
exactly,
with.
until they see the video. Yeah.
Because
So
I think that happens a lot also, and you know, when you're, because that transition from, you know, writing just from a high school to college can be very overwhelming, and so they may not be at a point in their kind of academic experience where they can be like, oh, this is the problem that I'm having. But if they're exposed to a bunch of um, different broadcasts, they, you know, they might glean things from there that they didn't even know that they
yeah,
were
so
like.
like I would put on there like, okay, you can either email us, you put it on this Excel sheet, or I'm available right after class for a couple of hours if you want to do one-on-one, you know. And no one would come to me. Like, I only did probably like 2 people right after class, and we just stayed in the same classroom. We didn't go anywhere, and so I think it's just um, a lot of it is just them not wanting to take advantage of, you know, of the help, because there's, I expressed through you know, different ways that they can do it, and a lot of it is either fear or laziness.
Yeah, it's probably a combination of fear and also maybe not, you know, because they're still in that first semester, they may not realize what kind of help they need yet. So yeah, I think you're right about that.
Yeah, that's why I think, yeah, sophomore is like a more, they kind of,
they're doing. So
Yeah.
that's, and did you have any questions specifically about just the stuff we talked about today?
No.
Do you think it was helpful?
Yeah.
Kind of
yeah.
them?
Mm-hmm. It's very informative. Yeah.
Awesome. And okay, well, thank you so much for chatting. I'm gonna send out the link to this conversation for everyone, and I'll also share. Well, I'll make sure that I share the first cohort meeting with you, just in case it didn't get to you. And then also, I have a couple of essays that I pulled from some academic sources just to, as examples of expository writing and persuasive writing on the dog topic that we discussed. So
that'd be cool.
What were you gonna say? Sorry, I just bulldozed right through you.
No, I said that'd be cool. I didn't hear a lot of like what you said at the end. The link for the other cohort that you did. Can you send? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll resend that. And that one's on commenting on student work.
Sorry.
So that's on that one. I think the topic is commenting on students' work.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yeah, so I will send all of that, and I hope you have a great. I don't know for meeting next week. I'll have to double check with Gary and Mike. I feel like the situation I'm having right now is like all the different school where you're supporting are kind of work on different schedules. So I'm just trying to make sure that we're all still in class every time we're discussing. But have a great rest of your Sunday.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye. Thank you.
Bye. You're welcome. Bye.